I don't know, I'm just me, I'm just me. I'm very disorganized at times, I'm organized at times, and I'm just me.
August 9th, 1986. A roaring crowd of 120,000 fans fills Knebworth Park. The lights dim. The anticipation is electric. Then, Freddie Mercury strides onto the stage, unaware that this will be his final performance with Queen. His voice is strained, his body exhausted, but he gives everything to the music, refusing to let his fans down. That night would mark the end of an era, but behind the dazzling spectacle, hidden struggles were unfolding. From Queen's meteoric rise to their internal battles, from Freddie's untouchable stage presence to the secret illness he fought in silence. This is the untold story of Queen's final concert and the heartbreaking final chapter of one of rock's greatest legends. How did Freddie Mercury push through his pain for one last electrifying performance? And what really happened in the days leading to his farewell? Tonight, we uncover the truth behind Freddie Mercury's final bow and the legacy he left behind. On September 5th, 1946, in the tropical heat of Zanzibar, a child was born who would one day command stadiums and redefine rock music. Farrokh Bulsara, later known as Freddie Mercury, grew up in a world of rich cultural influences. His early years were spent in India, where his love for music took root. At just 8 years old, he was sent to St. Peter's boarding school near Mumbai, a place that would shape his future in unexpected ways. It was here that he first began calling himself Freddie, and where his teachers noticed something special, a musical talent that couldn't be ignored. A piano was placed before him, and from the first touch of the keys, it was clear that music would be his destiny. By the time he was 12, Freddie had formed his first band, the Hectics, with a group of school friends. They played covers of rock and roll legends like Little Richard and Cliff Richard, blending Western sounds with the Indian melodies that surrounded them. But Freddie's inspiration didn't come from rock alone. He was captivated by the soaring voices of Bollywood singers, particularly Lata Mangeshkar, whose vocal range and emotional depth left a lasting mark on his own performance style. This unique mix of influences would later set Queen apart from every other band in rock history. But life in Zanzibar was about to change forever. In 1964, as the Zanzibar Revolution erupted, violence spread through the streets. Thousands were killed, and families like the Bulsaras found themselves in danger. Forced to flee, Freddie and his family escaped to England, leaving everything behind. The transition wasn't easy, but for Freddie, it was an opportunity, a chance to reinvent himself. Settling in a modest home in Feltham, near London, Freddie pursued his education at Ealing Art College, where he studied graphic design. But his passion for music never faded. He immersed himself in the local music scene, attending gigs and sketching out ideas for a band of his own. Then, fate stepped in. One night, Freddie was introduced to two musicians, guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor, who were playing in a band called Smile. Instantly, Freddie was drawn to their sound, but more importantly, he saw their potential. He wasn't just an admirer, he had a vision. When Smile's lead singer left the band in 1970, Freddie stepped in, bringing a new energy, a new image, and an unshakable belief in what they could become. "Let's call the band Queen," he suggested. The name was bold, grand, theatrical, just like Freddie himself. He saw Queen as more than just a rock band. It would be a spectacle, a force of nature. The band agreed, and with the addition of bassist John Deacon in 1971, the classic lineup of Queen was born. But success didn't come overnight. Their first two albums, Queen 1973, and Queen II, 1974, struggled to gain traction. Critics were unsure what to make of them. Were they progressive rock, heavy metal, glam rock? Queen refused to be put into a box. The band played gig after gig, building their reputation, but commercial success remained just out of reach. Then came Sheer Heart Attack in 1974, and with it, a song that changed everything, Killer Queen. The track, written by Freddie, was unlike anything on the charts. With its elegant piano melody, layered harmonies, and razor-sharp lyrics, it climbed to number 2 in the UK and cracked the US charts. Queen had finally arrived. Freddie Mercury had spent years shaping his identity, honing his craft, and defying expectations. He wasn't just another rock frontman, he was a star in the making. But the real explosion was yet to come. And soon, Queen would be on top of the world. By the mid-1970s, Queen had begun their ascent. But they weren't just looking to make hits. They were looking to redefine rock itself. And in 1975, they did just that. With 6 minutes of genre-bending brilliance, operatic harmonies, and one of the most ambitious music videos ever created, Bohemian Rhapsody shattered expectations and changed the course of music history. The song was unlike anything that had come before. A slow, emotional piano ballad that transformed into a theatrical opera section before crashing into a hard rock finale. It broke all the rules of conventional songwriting. Record executives doubted it. Radio stations hesitated. But Queen believed in their masterpiece. And when DJ Kenny Everett played it 14 times in one weekend, the public couldn't get enough. It soared to number 1 in the UK, staying there for 9 weeks. But Bohemian Rhapsody wasn't just a song, it was a visual revolution. The accompanying music video, filmed in just 4 hours on a tiny budget, became the first true promotional music video of its kind. The haunting image of the 4 band members in diamond formation, their faces lit with eerie intensity, became instantly iconic. Decades before MTV, Queen had already rewritten the playbook. At the heart of it all was Freddie Mercury, a frontman like no other. His flamboyant outfits, electric stage presence, and unmistakable voice set him apart from every rock star before him. His vocal range, spanning nearly 4 octaves, allowed him to shift effortlessly between soft, delicate melodies and earth-shaking power. He wasn't just singing, he was performing, commanding audiences with an unmatched magnetism. But pushing boundaries came with risks. In 1984, Queen released I Want to Break Free, a song about liberation and independence. The video? A hilarious yet bold parody of British soap operas featuring the band dressed in drag. In the UK, it was an instant hit. In the US, however, it was a different story. MTV refused to air the video, uncomfortable with its gender-bending humor. The controversy stunned the band, and Queen's American success began to wane. But for Freddie, it was all just another performance, one that, years later, would be embraced as a symbol of self-expression. By the mid-'80s, Queen had faced triumphs and setbacks, but nothing could have prepared them for what happened on July 13, 1985, the day they conquered the world. Live Aid was billed as the biggest concert event in history, a global charity show spanning 2 continents, broadcast to nearly 2 billion people. The biggest names in music filled the lineup, from David Bowie to U2, but no one would steal the show quite like Queen. As the clock struck 6:41 p.m. in London's Wembley Stadium, Freddie Mercury took the stage. Dressed simply in a white tank top and jeans, he didn't need costumes or theatrics, just his voice, his piano, and an audience ready to be swept away. From the moment he sang the opening lines of Bohemian Rhapsody, the energy shifted. Then came Radio Gaga. As Freddie clapped above his head, 72,000 fans followed in perfect unison. It was hypnotic, a connection between artist and audience that felt almost supernatural. The set list was relentless. Hammer to Fall, We Will Rock You, and finally, We Are the Champions, an anthem that seemed to transcend time and space. Backstage, Elton John shook his head in disbelief. "You bastards, you stole the show," he said. And he was right. Queen's 21-minute performance became the defining moment of Live Aid, often hailed as the greatest live set in rock history. And it did more than just captivate the world. It reignited Queen's career. With newfound momentum, they released A Kind of Magic in 1986, featuring songs from the fantasy film Highlander. Once again, they were selling out stadiums. Once again, they were at the top. But behind the scenes, something was changing. Freddie Mercury was keeping a secret, one that would soon reshape everything Queen had built. And his time on stage was running out. Star. By the summer of 1986, Queen was bigger than ever. Their Magic Tour was their most ambitious yet. 26 shows across Europe, playing to over 1 million fans. It was a spectacle of epic proportions. The stage at Knebworth Park stretched 160 feet across, lined with over 1,000 blinding lights, towering speakers, and 2 massive video screens. A separate generator was needed just to power the sheer scale of the production. But beyond the grandeur, something was different. Freddie Mercury was not at his best. He had been warned by doctors. His throat was inflamed, and his voice was under immense strain. But Freddie refused to cancel. He had never let his fans down before, and he wasn't going to start now. On August 9th, 1986, 120,000 people packed into Knebworth Park. Thousands more were stranded outside, unable to get in. The air was electric with anticipation. At precisely 6:41 p.m., the stage lights burst to life. The crowd erupted. And then, Freddie Mercury emerged. Dressed in his signature white tank top and yellow military-style jacket. With a commanding presence, he gripped the microphone stand and launched into one vision. From the first notes, it was clear. Freddie was struggling. His voice, once effortless, cracked under the strain. But if he was in pain, he didn't show it. Instead, he turned to the crowd, engaging them like never before. The audience sang along, filling in the notes he couldn't quite reach. Then came Who Wants to Live Forever. As the orchestral intro swelled, the mood shifted. The lyrics, haunting, poetic, seemed almost prophetic. Freddie's voice wavered, but it was raw, real. At that moment, it wasn't just a performance. It was a farewell, even if no one in the crowd realized it yet. By the time Bohemian Rhapsody arrived, Freddie had regained his strength. He powered through the ballad section, then stood center stage as the operatic vocals played from tape. But when the hard rock finale kicked in, he gave everything he had left, belting each lyric, hitting notes he hadn't dared to attempt in years. The crowd roared, their voices merging into a deafening wall of sound. And then, the final song, We Are the Champions. The moment was overwhelming. Freddie stretched his arms wide, as if embracing every fan in the stadium. His voice cracked slightly on the final chorus, but instead of pulling back, he held the note even longer. The audience screamed in response, singing with him, willing him on. At exactly 9:02 p.m., Queen closed the show with God Save the Queen. Normally, this was the cue for the band to exit the stage. But Freddie didn't leave. He stood there, soaking in the moment. Slowly, he stepped forward, placed his hands on his hips, and gazed out at the sea of fans. Then, in one final dramatic gesture, he bowed deeply and whispered, "Thank you, lovely people. Good night and sweet dreams." It was the last time Freddie Mercury would ever perform live. Backstage, emotions ran high. John Deacon, usually the quiet one, lost control. Just 18 minutes before the show, he had thrown his bass across the dressing room in frustration, narrowly missing Roger Taylor's drum technician. No one had ever seen him so angry. "I can't do this anymore," he muttered to Brian May. It was as if he already knew. The end of Queen, as they knew it, had arrived. Then tragedy struck. In the middle of the crowd, just 50 meters from the stage, 23-year-old Michael Jennings collapsed during Who Wants to Live Forever. Medics rushed to his side, but there was nothing they could do. He had suffered a fatal heart attack. Unbeknownst to the band, as they played their most emotional song of the night, a life had been lost. Freddie Mercury didn't stay for the usual post-show celebrations. He walked off the stage quickly, disappearing into the dressing room. Normally, he was the last to leave, sharing drinks and laughter with the crew. But this time, he was silent. As he stepped into the car that would take him back to London, he stared out of the window, dabbing his eyes with a handkerchief. In that moment, he knew. He had given everything he had left. This was goodbye. After the electrifying Magic Tour, Queen took a step back from the spotlight. But behind the scenes, Freddie Mercury was fighting a battle he couldn't outrun. In 1987, he received the diagnosis he had feared: HIV. At a time when misinformation and stigma surrounded the disease, Freddie chose silence. He told only his closest friends and continued on as if nothing had changed. Despite the worsening symptoms, Freddie refused to let his illness define him. He poured himself into music, recording tirelessly with Queen. In 1990, as the band worked on what would become Innuendo, his condition had visibly worsened. His body was weaker, but his voice was still powerful. One song in particular stood as a testament to his resilience: "The Show Must Go On." The lyrics were haunting, almost prophetic. Brian May later admitted that he wasn't sure Freddie could physically record it. But Freddie, ever the performer, downed a shot of vodka, looked at Brian, and said, "I'll do it, darling." And he did. In one take, he delivered one of the most powerful performances of his career. By May 1991, he was fading fast, but still, he recorded. His final session at Montreux Studios was for A Winter's Tale. He could barely stand, yet his voice carried the same emotion it always had. His bandmates later recalled how he would push through, determined to leave behind as much music as possible. His last public appearance was at the Brit Awards in February 1990. When Queen received their Outstanding Contribution to British Music Award, it was Brian May who spoke on behalf of the band. Freddie, visibly frail, stood quietly beside him. When the microphone was handed to him, he simply said, "Thank you. Good night." These were the last words he would ever speak to the public. As the months passed, Freddie's world grew smaller. By mid-1991, he rarely left his home at Garden Lodge in Kensington. Friends visited, but he spent most of his time with Mary Austin, Jim Hutton, and his beloved cats. Then, on November 22, 1991, he made a decision. He would stop all medication aside from pain relief. He knew the end was near. The following day, he released a statement confirming what the world had long suspected. I wish to confirm that I have been tested HIV positive and have AIDS. I felt it correct to keep this information private, to protect the privacy of those around me. However, the time has come for my friends and fans to know the truth. I hope that everyone will join with me, my doctors, and all those worldwide in the fight against this terrible disease. Just 24 hours later, on the evening of November 24th, 1991, Freddie Mercury passed away peacefully at the age of 45. The official cause was bronchial pneumonia, a complication of AIDS. The world was in shock. Fans gathered outside his home, lighting candles and leaving flowers in tribute. David Bowie, Elton John, and countless musicians paid their respects. Tributes poured in from every corner of the world. But Freddie had one last surprise. In 1995, Queen released Made in Heaven, featuring the final songs he had recorded. His voice, his spirit, his energy, it lived on. And as the show must go on played over the airwaves, one thing became clear. Freddie Mercury was never really gone. His music, his magic, and his legacy would last forever. Star Freddie Mercury was known for his larger-than-life persona, but behind the dazzling stage presence and the wild parties was a deeply private man with a complex, emotional world few ever truly understood. At the center of that world was Mary Austin, the woman Freddie once called the love of his life. They met in 1969, before Queen had taken off, and their connection was instant. They moved in together, got engaged, and for years Mary was Freddie's rock. But as time went on, Freddie struggled with his identity. In 1976, he sat Mary down and told her the truth. "I think I'm bisexual." She gently responded, "No, Freddie, I think you're gay." It was a moment that changed their relationship, but not their bond. Though they never married, Freddie's love for Mary never wavered. He bought her a home near his own, and in his final will, left her the majority of his fortune, calling her his common-law wife. In the later years of his life, Freddie found love again with Jim Hutton, an Irish hairdresser he met in 1985. Unlike many of the people in Freddie's circle, Jim wasn't interested in fame or fortune. He simply loved Freddie for who he was. For 6 years, they were inseparable. Jim stood by him through his illness, caring for him in his final days. After Freddie's passing, Jim revealed the quiet, tender moments they shared, the way Freddie would stroke his hair at night, the simple joys of watching television together. It was a love story, far from the spotlight, but one that meant everything to Freddie. Despite his success, Freddie's sexuality was always a subject of media speculation. Interviewers pried, tabloids spread rumors, but Freddie never let them define him. When asked about his personal life, he would deflect with humor or turn the conversation back to his music. He lived by his own rules, refusing to be boxed in by labels or societal expectations. Offstage, Freddie was an artist in every sense of the word. His passion extended beyond music. He adored fashion, design, and fine art. His home, Garden Lodge, was a treasure trove of paintings, sculptures, and antique furniture. He collected Picasso sketches, Japanese woodblock prints, and delicate glasswork, surrounding himself with beauty at every turn. But of all his loves, one of the most famous was his devotion to his cats. At one point, he had over 10, each with their own personality and quirks. He even dedicated his solo album, Mr. Bad Guy, to my cat Jerry, also Tom, Oscar, and Tiffany, and all the cat lovers in the universe. He would call home from tour just to speak to them, and when he was gone, he made sure they were always well cared for. Even in death, Freddie maintained his mystery. His final wish was that his remains be kept secret, hidden away so that no one could ever disturb them. After his cremation, Mary Austin took his ashes and, in accordance with his wishes, never revealed their final resting place. To this day, no one knows where Freddie Mercury's remains truly lie. But in the end, it doesn't matter. Because Freddie Mercury never belonged to one place. He belonged to the world. His music, his artistry, his spirit, they are everywhere, forever etched into history. Freddie Mercury's voice fell silent on November 24, 1991, but his impact never faded. Decades after his passing, his music still echoes across generations, proving that true legends never die. Queen's legacy continued to grow, defying time and trends. Their greatest hits album remains the best-selling record in UK history, a testament to the timeless power of their songs. Tracks like We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions, and Bohemian Rhapsody are not just classics. They are anthems woven into the fabric of music history. Then, in 2018, Freddie's story reached a whole new generation with the release of the film Bohemian Rhapsody. The movie became a global phenomenon, grossing nearly $1 billion and winning 4 Academy Awards. Rami Malek's portrayal of Freddie brought the legend back to life, introducing millions to the man behind the music. For longtime fans, it was a chance to relive his brilliance. For newcomers, it was an awakening, an invitation into the world of Queen. But Freddie Mercury's influence extends beyond music. He remains an LGBTQ+ icon, a symbol of unapologetic self-expression. At a time when being openly gay was dangerous, Freddie lived fearlessly, embracing his identity without explanation or compromise. Though he never labeled himself, his presence on stage and in the public eye shattered barriers, paving the way for future generations of artists to be their true selves. As the years pass, Freddie's legend only grows stronger. His music is streamed billions of times. His voice fills stadiums long after his departure, and his image remains as striking as ever. But perhaps the most enduring part of Freddie Mercury is the joy he left behind. His performances were more than just concerts. They were moments of pure magic, explosions of energy and passion that could never be replicated. And so, as the final notes of the show must go on play, we remember not just the musician, but the man, the artist, the visionary, the legend. Because though Freddie Mercury may no longer walk among us, his voice, his energy, and his music will live on forever.